So thank
Hi, this is Moshe Jacobs for DeBarra Spoken Word. And I am really happy to be here with Afric McGlinchey, who lives near Clonakilty and will be our next special guest at the Spoken Word event on Wednesday, the 9th of July at the Barra's Folk Club in Clonakilty. Welcome, Afric.
thank
And we're here to talk about your latest poetry book, which you could show me. Yes, it's got a French name, À la belle étoile. And could you tell me a little bit about how you came uh, to decide on this specific format? Because it's quite an interesting approach to poetry. It's not about your deepest soul upheavals, but it's about somebody else. Could you say
Yeah,
about that?
yeah. I came across this is the Odyssey of Jeanne Barret. She was the first woman to circumnavigate the globe, and that's a feat she accomplished by disguising her sex. So she masqueraded as a boy to get on board this ship that was on a massive expedition around the world to explore and collect plants. It was during the age of exploration. So I came across her because I bought a bougainvillea plant, and I wanted to know how to look after this tropical plant in Ireland. Not exactly a conducive climate. So I was just Googling bougainvillea, and up came this story because, in fact, it was Jeanne Barret who discovered the bougainvillea, and but I became very interested in her. I started trying to find out as much information as possible, and at the time there were only two books about her that I could locate. So I read both of those. Both of them were written by women. And I was just mesmerized by her story. And then lockdown occurred and we were stuck, in our little 5 mile radius. I happened to be very lucky and I live near the sea. But so I had a small stretch of beach I could walk up and down every day. I was walking up and down and I was imagining her on that same water out there, some hundred in the 1700s, sort of traveling on her ship. So I had my ex internally. I was on a voyage as well by traveling with her on her voyage. So that's what got me through lockdown.
Yeah, I mean it's an amazing story, and I really enjoyed reading it because you don't just talk about, yeah, I mean, the fact that she is such a special woman, but you also discuss her, well, what's basically her personal life, her love life, and I'm a bit of a reader who then thinks, oh, what is this true? How much is how much is known about her? Did she write a diary? Did she write letters? How do you know what kind of historic information was there about her
Yeah. Okay.
personally?
Yeah, I there was very little about her. There are her records, birth, death, and marriage records. There's one notebook, field notes in her handwriting. Strangely, she was a peasant woman. She was also a herbalist and an orphan. So, but she was strangely literate, which was, there's some speculation about how she could have been literate. Her mother was Huguenot, and she might have been higher born than the dad, the father who was a laborer. So maybe the mother taught her, but I chose, because there are no records, I got to use my own imagination about her life, and I wanted to inhabit her voice because she's literally been written out of history, and the only reason she's known about it all is because once they discovered that she was a woman, there was an assault on her. So that went into the records, into that Bougainville's records, and the doctor on board, and a couple of other people mentioned it in their published journals. So that's how we even know she existed. So yeah, I've lost my train of thought. What was it? What before that? Oh yeah, the records. So that so
Yeah.
yeah, I decided I was just going to give her a voice. Initially, I thought I was going to overlay my own narrative, my contemporary narrative, with hers and see where we met in terms of our similar experiences and so on. But then I decided, no, I'm going to give her center stage because I loved the language of the 70s. I loved that archaic language. I loved working with that. And I got to love her story and her voice. I wanted her voice to come out and not block it with another intruding voice. I thought
Yeah.
she's you know, the male, you know, patriarchy had just effectively written her out of history. She was responsible for collecting up to 6,000 plants
Wow.
the world and bringing them back to Europe, to France. And she's not credited. Well, she is credited because she was given a pension by
Okay.
the Navy.
And
So
did
that's her.
and did all those plants go into one collection, one
Yes,
identified
well, yeah.
collection?
I think about 3,000 of them ended up in a collection in Paris. But you know, Commerson, who was the botanist she accompanied, he was given the credit, of course.
Okay.
But he had been afflicted with a dog bite and couldn't go abroad offshore to go collect. So she did all the collecting for him and brought them back, and she pressed them and illustrated them and did all the work effectively.
Yeah.
And the reason she didn't keep journals, I think, is because she didn't want to betray him. She was in love with him, obviously, so they had a relationship.
And they were
So
together on the ship.
they were together quite, yes. Luckily, they were given a cabin.
Yeah.
So because of all the botanical plants they were collecting, they needed space. So she had the privacy of at least a private loo she could use, so she could keep hidden her
Yeah.
gender for 2 years. 2 years she managed to keep it hidden, and then when they arrived in Tahiti, it was the islanders themselves who instantly knew she was a woman. So
Okay. And
yeah, so
this is a historical fact. They discovered that she was a woman. That's okay.
that was reported by the surgeon on board ship. Yeah, so
Okay.
yeah,
That's
but it
amazing,
was
isn't it?
crew members themselves then obviously felt very betrayed by her.
Yeah.
Well, they felt, you
And
know,
they violated her as well.
yeah,
Yeah.
yes, they
Yeah,
did.
yeah. I mean,
I don't.
it's a very visceral story, you know, but that makes it all the more interesting because she becomes like a true person you start to care about. And I suppose
Hmm.
did you ever see a picture of her? Photography wasn't
No,
yet, no?
no, there is an image drawn. It's not, they don't know what she looks like, but somebody drew a picture back in the 1800s, much after her death, a picture of the clothes that she would have likely worn. And it's just a very unattractive picture. I thought of having an image on the cover. I had a different kind of cover, but in the end, I went for the nautical image of being on the ship. And because one of the poems has them climbing the rigging. She climbs up herself. And I really like the fact that there are two tiny figures climbing up
So,
yeah, they're climbing up the sort of rigging here and there you can see. So I just decided, because it feels this feels like you're physically on the ship yourself if
yeah.
you're just looking straight up and you're seeing it. And I wanted to focus more on the voyage than on, I didn't want to romanticize her. I wanted to focus on her achievements.
And I mean, how long did you work on this? I mean, how do you start a collection like that? Did you know you were starting on a collection, or did you start first on one poem and then thought, oh, I want to write more about her? Or was that?
Um, I had I had been working on a collection with a maritime theme. So I had been going to the beach a lot and taking notes, just getting that sea, just connecting with the ocean. So and I'll save those poems for another collection down the road. But so I was already in that sea mode, and then I started writing about her. I don't know, how can you tell? It just kind of happened by osmosis. I just became mesmerized by her. And then the poems just started pouring out. Also, it was lockdown, so there was very little to distract me.
Yeah.
So I definitely spent at least, I'd say it took about, well, actually, I handed my book in to my publisher in 2021.
Oh, really?
So I had it for a few years. Yeah, so I had to push her to publish it now because during the Olympics, Jeanne turned out to be one of the historic figures who was honored. There were 10 female historic figures that came out of the water, out of the Seine, um, in the form of sculptural figures.
Okay, okay,
And
okay.
one of them, so I contacted Jessie and said, quick, I need to get my collection out now because her name is in the
Yeah,
ether. So they jumped on it because she had such a backlog because of lockdown and
yeah, yeah, yeah,
everything being
yeah.
so there was a long delay. But yeah, so she's come out now this year.
But in a way, I mean, the was the last thing you published your well, how we call it, a novel about
No,
the winds? No.
I had a kind of surrealist little chapbook that came out in 2020. Where are we? 24 last year.
Okay.
A
What's
little.
that called?
It's called. Hang on, let me get it for you. It's called
Yeah.
The Throat.
Oh yeah.
Here. Yeah, the throat bird. Can you
Okay.
see that?
Yes, I
It's
can see it.
it's a bird inside. Michael did the cover for me. It's a chick inside a human throat. It's very in a very unnatural place, and
Okay.
it was about constraint, and it was about re what's being hidden and repressed, and what cannot be uttered. I wanted that
Okay.
sense, the things that can't come out because there's a blockage there. So it's about, yeah, there's a it's an eco poem, but it's also there are poems about grief as well in that. My father died recently, so
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. And
but that kept me going while I was waiting for this
for
book to come. Or
for it
étoile
to come out of the water.
yeah.
Yeah. And the fact that it's a chapbook doesn't mean that you're going to publish it more widely.
It just this book is also it turns out to be very expensive. If you order it, it's very expensive. For some reason, the postage is crazy. So I think what I'm going to do is like maybe I'll have it if I'm maybe even at the reading. I might have a few books there for
Yeah,
sale.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, because I
There are different.
ordered this book from Salmon Poetry and the
Yeah.
posters was normal, but that's not Salmon Poetry. That's
Yeah, no, this is SurVision that they do surrealist poetry.
oh,
And
okay.
for some reason their postage is quite high. I don't know why. I don't know where the book comes from. I don't know where they.
Yeah, it could be from
I don't know. I
Sweden
don't.
somewhere.
Yeah,
Okay.
so it ends up being expensive for a chapbook. So
Yeah.
I asked him to drop the price, and he wouldn't do that. So
And
um, yeah,
did I mean it's quite a courageous thing to do what she did. You know, she must have been a really feisty and strong and determined woman to do that. Was that, I mean, how does that affect your own feel? You know, like did it give you more confidence or did it like give
I know. Actually, I was asked before, did
because
I?
you're a feisty woman too. I wouldn't, that's not
Funny enough, I'm a lot more fearful than she is or
like
was.
you.
I had to guess about her personality, but one of the things was that when they met, she was in her 20s, early 20s, and she wasn't married. And obviously back in those days, people got married much earlier because they had
Yeah.
much shorter lives. I mean, peasant women normally wouldn't live beyond their late 30s, I'd say, even earlier they would have died. So she wasn't married. So that shows a sense of independence. Plus, she was selling herbs to apothecaries nearby. So she had her own, she was independent, she was different. She wasn't just a regular laborer, and she could read. And then she met this botanist who was a real arrogant, bollocks actually. But he was impressed by her. And I thought, wow, for him to be impressed by a peasant woman and be impressed by her knowledge, I thought she made an impression on him. So I got the impression she must have been intelligent because he was very arrogant, very intelligent himself. And yeah, and he asked her to become part of his household. His wife died in childbirth, so he had a newborn baby at home. So that's how they ended up. She ended up initially going to his house to take care of the newborn baby, but then the baby started. So, and then she became, once he discovered she could read. Well, he discovered straight away she could read and draw, and she became his assistant then. So.
And did he actually write a lot about her or write anything about her that you could
I
read?
know well, certainly after the ship, he does mention her, and he actually did credit her with he honored her by naming a plant after her. But it was discovered that the plant had previously been discovered and it already had a name, so she lost. So that plant, she didn't get that honor. But now they've honored her by naming a range of mountains on Mars. Is it on Mars
Oh,
or Pluto? On Mars, I think. So she's been honored in that way, and I think now there is a plant. There is a plant named after her, but that only happened in the last couple of years.
okay.
So
Yeah, you wonder how many more
she must
women
have,
are
yeah, she must have been
written
incredible
on. Yeah,
because also to con 200 men on board ship. It was a very small ship. I mean, there was only about a foot per person,
wow.
so it was very, very cramped. And all the livestock, they had loads of livestock and it was the storage ship actually, the store ship. So it had all the food supplies for two
Yeah,
ships.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And Bougainville was he the owner of the ships?
He was the admiral who had no, he was the he had been asked by Louis XIV, was it the 14th? Yeah, to lead this expedition. So
Okay, what was
he
the
led the
purpose of the expedition was to
it
discover?
was discovery. So there was actually an astronomer on board. There was the botanist, and what else was there? Oh, someone who was trying to discover latitude and to get the longitude. Or was it? Yeah, longitude. I think they had worked out latitude, and they were still trying to learn about longitude, but they hadn't, and he didn't succeed. That came later. So it was basically a voyage of discovery.
Yeah. And some of the plants like the bougainville wouldn't have been, because that's quite a common plant in France now, isn't it? Bougainville.
Yeah. In those days, they brought it back to Europe.
Okay.
So it had never been seen before. And yeah, it was during the time of the spice trade as well. The spice monopoly. In fact, it was Holland, the Netherlands that dominated the spice trade at that point. So
and the slave trade. Yes.
Hmm?
And the slave trade.
I know. There was that complication. I was so immersed in her story, her discoveries, that I literally avoided the more problematic moral issues of, slavery and colonization and all of that. I literally just focused on her story and the impressions that must have swept across her, what she saw. I could have gone further, but it would have just got so unwieldy as a collection. I didn't want it too messy with too many. I just literally wanted to have her story. And I wanted an uplifting story at this point. I mean, not all of her story is uplifting, of course. It's harrowing. There's a story that is very difficult, but I wanted it to be, I suppose
but I mean, there's also things that you imagine when you're reading it. And it's nice. I found myself often looking at because you've got the place where she is and the moment, the point in time, the date there, the year. So I found myself looking at that to get a kind of thread into the story. And it's quite a full story.
The way I laid it out, you were asking me earlier about my layout. I decided I wanted it to be a narrative sequence in her voice, but it's not necessarily chronological, because I didn't want to have just land poems and then sea poems. So every now and then during the voyage, I have flashbacks to when she's on land, so that we just get a variation. And also climactically, sometimes we're in the snow, and sometimes we're in tropical sunshine. So there's the variation, but I just wanted it all in her voice. And I suppose as I went along, your own embedded memories start resurfacing. So I did find as I went along that more and more of my own memories were leaking. I suppose, because it's my lens, isn't it? I'm viewing her life through the lens of my own experiences and as a woman as well. So there are loads of So I did find that I had loads of connections with her as time were immersed into her story.
I look forward to hearing and seeing you read Jean Barré's story on La Belle Étoile. Thanks very much, Afric. On the 9th of July, about 8:30-ish, Wednesday in Clonakilty, Ireland, in case you see this in Tahiti. Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.